Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Longines Hydroconquest 41mm. This watch is available from Longines authorised dealers for €1,750. Longines was founded in 1832 in St. Imier in Switzerland, and the Hydroconquest is one of their most iconic pieces. Now, as this is a review sample from Longines, it doesn't come with a watch box, warranty card and owner's instruction manual. However, if you purchase the watch from an authorised dealer, of course it will come with a watch box, warranty card and owner's manual, which details the operation of the movement used, which is the Longines Caliber L888 automatic. So, with regards to dimensions, we have a 41mm case diameter. We have a 51mm lug-to-lug measurement, a thickness of 12mm, and a lug width of 21mm. The bracelet tapers from 21mm at the lugs down to 19mm at the flip lock clasp, and as you can see, the flip lock clasp is signed to a high standard with the Longines emblem and also water resistance rating 300 meters. Now, as always, I'm going to be critical of the clasp only having 3 micro adjustment holes. I would like to see Longines lengthen the clasp and also increase the gauge of the 316L grade stainless steel used. I would like to see 4 micro adjustment holes because that would allow for more fine tuning of the length to get the perfect fit. But on a positive note, you'll see it does have half links in the bracelet, which does make it easy to get the perfect fit. So I'll show you the interior to the clasp. Solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, signed with Longines. Flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks, no sharp edges, no sharp corners. It is finished to a very high standard. It also has a diver's extension link which can be deployed easily, but again I'm going to be critical of this because it's pressed stainless steel. At this price point I would like to see a solid milled diver's extension link rather than this pressed stainless steel extension link. Although it does suffice, it does deploy easily and it does snap into the body with a nice positive click. So the flip lock clasp also closes with a nice positive click and a nice positive secondary click to the signed flip lock. With regards to the rest of the specification, we have a flat sapphire crystal with double AR coating. So there is anti-reflective coating on both the top side and the underside of the sapphire crystal, and several layers of AR coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished hands, and also the silver mirror polished applied indices and large Arabic numerals at 12, 9 and 6. Good symmetry to the dial, clearly legible, and I like the dark navy sunburst blue dial, which also changes to a royal blue depending on light conditions. The date complication is framed in white, good proportions to the black Arabic numerals on the white date wheel, so the legibility of the date complication is good, and I like the symmetry of the applied indices. They are well proportioned. The handset is finished to perfection, flawless mirror polishing and nice facets to the hands, which are an iconic feature of the Hydroconquest series. I like the applied Longines emblem at 12 o'clock and just the right amount of text or specification. One detail I like about the Hydroconquest style is it's not over branded with unnecessary text or specification. We simply have Longines and the emblem at 12 and then automatic 30 bar 300 meter at 6. So just the right amount of information. The ceramic bezel insert is very well executed, inlaid with white paint. As you can see, the first quarter, minute 6 are indexed and the Arabic numerals are also infilled. Nice fonts and clearly legible, and nice glossy finish to the blue ceramic, which is navy blue. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, gear tooth profile to it, and very well finished. We don't have any sharp edges or points to the tops of the gear teeth on the bezel. It's a relatively low profile stainless steel bezel, but it is very grippy. One can get good purchase on it with one's index finger and thumb, so it feels very tactile and grippy to use. With regards to the finishing to the head of the piece, flawless brass satin finishing to the tops of the lugs, nice crisp edge to the flanks of the case. Flawless longitudinal brass satin finishing to the flanks, and there's an absolutely beautiful luster to the flanks to the case. As you can see, I love the way the brass satin finishing catches the lights with the luster. The bracelet is also finished to perfection. The mirror polished centre links contrast with the brass satin finish outer links. Beautiful luster to the outer links, and that contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks. Screw pins rather than push pins, so you don't have any cost cutting with regards to the bracelet. They've also made the correct decision by using female pivoted end links rather than male end links, because that reduces the effective lug to lug measurement. Now it is a long case at 51mm, and as you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider the sweet spot for lug to lug to be 48, because 48 fits collectors regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. At 51mm, it's 3mm in excess of the sweet spot of 48. But they have made the correct decision by shortening the effective lug-to-lug measurement by not using male end links. As you can see, the female pivoted end links articulate very well, and that means they pull the end of the bracelet close to the wrist, so one doesn't get an abhorrent gap underneath the bracelet and the tips of the lugs. With regards to the crown, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finish to it, mirror polished domed cap and embossed to a high standard with the Longines emblem. So let's test the screw down crown execution. The screw down crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 300 metres of water resistance, which is strong specification. Absolutely silky smooth. This is 10 out of 10 screw down crown execution. It feels sublime. This is silky smooth. No resistance, no friction whatsoever. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So, in the first position, one can manually wind the caliber L888 automatic to top it up to its maximum 72-hour power reserve. Absolute pleasure to manually wind the L888. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. Pulling it out to the first click position is the date complication, so I'm just going to move the minute hand out of the way to show it to you better. Right, so if you look closely at the date complication, you can see rotating the crown anti-clockwise advances the quickset complication as one would expect. Nice light resistance to it. It does click over with a nice positive click with every day of the month, but it feels lighter than other quickset complications you may be familiar with, so it does feel pleasant to use. But I personally prefer a heavier quickset complication. I like to feel a more solid click, a heavier mechanism. But it's characteristic of the L888 that it has a light resistance to the date complication. Pulling it out to the second click position is the final setting position, as you can see, and I've now hacked the movement, so it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. If you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. So now in the time setting position, absolutely silky smooth, clockwise and anti-clockwise, no back play whatsoever. There's an immediate response. When one rotates the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, the minute hand immediately moves. So I like that there's no back play in the caliber L888. So absolute pleasure to set the time. Pushing the crown in's got a nice positive click and that restarts the movement. Let's test screwing it back down. Immediate thread pickup. This is outstanding screw down crown execution. To put this into perspective, this is every bit as good as a Rolex triplock crown used on the Submariner dates, and I regard that as the industry standard. That is one of the best screw down crowns in the watchmaking industry. So this feels exactly the same as a Rolex triplock crown in terms of smoothness of the threading. The internal thread perfectly interfaces with the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. So it's an outstanding 300 metre screw down crown. Right, so I'll show you the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel. Matte finish to it, as you can see. The milled slots are very well executed, no sharp edges to it. And the matte finish to it gives it a tool watch aesthetic, and as you can see, it's embossed to a high standard with the Longines emblem and also engraved with the specification and the reference number of the piece. Now it is a relatively low profile case back, bearing in mind it houses the caliber L888 automatic, and I really like it. I like the matte finish of it. It makes a refreshing change from mirror polished or concentric CNC lathe tool machining to it. It really does have a nice tool watch or military aesthetic to it, and it's a characteristic of the Hydroconquest series. They have these matte case backs. So the embossed emblem is absolutely gorgeous to look at, and I really like it. The end links are a good solid fit to the case, there's no play in them, and they're also well finished, and the underside to the case is very well finished, no sharp edges to the tips of the lugs or the bottom edge of the flanks. Right, so let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Nice loud audible clicks. It feels even all the way through to 360 degrees. No lateral side-side play whatsoever. No back play whatsoever. So it has medium resistance. It doesn't feel too tight. It doesn't feel too loose. I like the loud audible clicks, it's very pleasant, and I like the fact it feels tight despite having medium resistance. Perfect alignment between the loom pip and triangle with the 12 o'clock index on the dial, the applied 12 and also the white minute 6 on the chapter ring. So this is an example to other brands of how to get bezel action correct, because the medium resistance doesn't feel too firm or too loose, it feels just right, but we've got no back play and no lateral side play, and 10 out of 10 perfect alignment. So it's aesthetically pleasing but also very grippy and tactile. I like the gear tooth profile, and it makes a refreshing change from using a coin edge bezel or a scalloped bezel. This gear tooth bezel is low profile like a coin edge bezel, but it does feel very nice to grip. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report that this will easily fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist. I can easily slide my index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp, and I'm now on position 3 of the 3 micro adjustments, so the maximum extension. So this will easily fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist. So as you can see, it does have wrist presence, being a 41mm head of the piece. Now, Longines also make the Hydroconquest in a 39mm, so straight away I'm going to say, if you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you may find the 41mm version we're looking at here to wear with too much wrist presence and too much heft. This is 185 grams with all the links in the bracelet. So it is a heavy piece, although it does feel very well balanced, because they've made the correct decision by using a 21mm lug width, tapering from 21 down to 19, versus using a 20 to 16, which is the industry standard taper. So correctly proportioned bracelet on the 41mm head of the piece, but it is heavy and it does wear with wrist presence. If you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist, you may find the 39mm to fit you better, but however, if you have a larger 7 to 8-inch wrist, you may enjoy the wrist presence of the 41mm version and also enjoy the heft, because it does give a feeling of quality. Now, as I've discussed, they've made the correct decision by using female pivoted end links rather than male end links, because as you can see, although it does have a long lug-to-lug measurement of 51 versus the perfect 48, it doesn't have an abhorrent gap beneath the tips of the lugs, because they do curve around the wrist like a tonneau case, so it's a very snug fit, nice deep undercut to the case. And also, as you can see, the end link in the bracelet pulls down very snugly to the wrist, so nice tight snug fit to the wrist with the curved lugs and also the end link of the bracelet. So female pivoted end links are definitely the correct choice, and it does actually wear very comfortably for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. Now, the thing I most like about this piece is it is only 12mm thick, and that is very impressive, something that Longines deserve full credit for, because with an automatic one would expect this to be circa 13mm due to it having a rotor on the underside of the movement. But they've made the correct decision by using a flat sapphire crystal rather than a double dome sapphire crystal. Had they used a double dome sapphire crystal, that would have increased the thickness to circa 13mm. At 12mm, it is an incredibly thin and low profile piece, despite the 41mm wrist presence. So needless to say, this will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So very well balanced piece, very comfortable to wear, very aesthetically pleasing. The feel good factor is good, and I like the fact it's low profile at 12mm. Very snug fit to the wrist, one of the lowest profile automatic pieces I have reviewed. And it's 300 meters. Usually with 300 meter pieces, they are significantly thicker than 200 meter dive pieces, because they have a thicker sapphire crystal and thicker case back in order to provide the 300 meters of water resistance. But this is deceptively low profile at only 12mm, so it's a very well proportioned piece. I love the taper on the lugs down to 21mm lug width. It's a very well executed case shape. Now, the pointed crown guards are subjective. Some collectors will dislike the angular profile to the crown guards. However, it is a characteristic of the Hydroconquest. Personally, I like it. I think the angular crown guards do an excellent job of protecting the large coin edge finished crown from any damage, and they are a feature. The angular profiles really do work very well because they're brush satin finish and they complement the brush satin finish to the lugs. So the case shape is very well executed, and I actually like the pointed finish to the angular lugs. No sharp edges, no burrs, and they are very aesthetically pleasing. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. This is clearly BGW9 Superlume Nova. The blue tone of the BGW9 on the lume pip in the ceramic bezel insert, the applied Arabic numerals, the applied indices, and also the hands perfectly matches. We've got the same colour of blue Lume Nova, blue BGW9 Superlume Nova used on all three. Now, the proportions of the hands are correct and good orientation to the dial because of we have the large applied Arabic numerals at 12, 9 and 6, which is an iconic feature of Hydroconquest dials. So the proportion of the large Arabic numerals is good, they're clearly legible. The applied indices are also clearly legible, and one can clearly differentiate between the hour hand and the minute hand. So the hands are well proportioned, and the quality of the BGW9 is glowing brightly, and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. So this is clearly 5 to 6 layers, and I'm pleased to see Longines haven't used the cost-cutting measure of applying 3 to 4 layers. So 10 out of 10 performance, this really cannot be improved upon. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this uses the Longines Caliber L888 automatic. It has 21 joules, it runs at 25,200 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3.5 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which use for complications, and a quick set complication, which I've demonstrated. 72-hour power reserve is very impressive. Now, the Caliber L888 automatic is based upon the ETA Caliber A31.L11, which in itself is an excellent movement. It's a reliable, well-proven Swiss caliber, and it has a bidirectional winding rotor, so therefore it's more efficient than unidirectional winding movements. The two features I most like about the Caliber L888 is that it uses a Nivershock shock absorption system. So Nivershock means that the movement is highly resistant to shock damage, and the other feature I like about it is it uses the silicium balance spring. So silicium is made from silicon and therefore it is highly anti-magnetic. So this is a shock resistant movement and it's also an anti-magnetic movement. So no negatives to it whatsoever. I like the 72-hour power reserve. Now the negative is usually movements have a 40-hour power reserve, typically such as the SW200-1 or the ETA 2824-2. The 72-hour power reserve means that when you're manually winding it, it takes more clockwise turns of the crown to fully wind it, to fully build up the tension in the mainspring. Normally when a 40-hour automatic movement is exhausted, when the mainspring has fully discharged its tension, 40 clockwise turns is enough to fully wind a 40-hour movement. But this has 72 hours power reserve, so therefore one has to wind the crown more than 40 turns in order to build it up to its maximum 72 hours. But however, if you wear the piece for 8 to 12 hours per day, it will of course wind automatically with the rotor because the rotor is efficient. It's a bidirectional rotor. This can wind both clockwise and anti-clockwise, often with movements that are only unidirectional winding, and therefore the rotor has to spin one way in order to wind it. When it spins the other way, it has negligible winding effect. So I like it's an efficient movement with a bidirectional winding rotor. 72-hour power reserve is strong. With regards to accuracy, this is running consistently at plus 2 seconds per day when fully wound to its maximum 72 hours. That is actually within COSC chronometer limits of -4 to +6. To get plus 2 seconds per day is outstanding accuracy, and it's an indication that Longines are well regulating their Caliber L888 automatics they're using in the Hydroconquest. So reliable movement, the build quality, quality control, materials and accuracy are all outstanding. 72 hours, silicium balance spring, which is anti-magnetic, and Nivershock shock resistant system. So it's shock resistant, anti-magnetic, no negatives to it whatsoever. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So from Longines authorised dealers, the price point is €1,750. So it's clearly a mid-tier piece. Now, I consider this to be excellent quality and excellent value at €1,750. It is worth buying this Hydroconquest for the movement alone. The Caliber L888 automatic, which is based upon the ETA Caliber A31.L11, is an excellent movement, 72-hour power reserve plus 2 seconds per day accuracy within chronometer limits. So it's worth buying for the movement alone. The specification is loaded because we've got double AR coating on the sapphire crystal, BGW9 superluminova, 300 meters of water resistance, so they haven't cut any corners. The only negative really is the clasp. I would like to see 4 micro adjustment holes and a heavier gauge of 316L grade stainless steel used in the clasp, and also a solid milled extension link rather than the pressed diver's extension link. The clasp is the only shortcoming with the watch. Other than that, the build quality, quality control, finishing and materials and specification are all loaded. Now, the thing to bear in mind is this comes with a 5-year international warranty, and that's something else one has to factor into the price point of the piece, being $1,750. Often at that price point, one would only expect a 12-month or 2-year warranty, but this has a 5-year warranty and it is worth paying for. So potentially one could buy this watch, and if it develops any faults with the movement or the watch itself within 5 years, one can return it to a Longines authorised dealer for repair under warranty, and that is something worth paying for. So yes, I consider it to be excellent quality. Yes, I consider it to be excellent value. I'm going to declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Longines Hydroconquest 41mm. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.